The wind in the Gray Fang territory didn't whisper. It screamed. It clawed at the cliffs and ripped through the pines, a sound so cold it felt like the land itself was dying. And in the heart of that frozen night, a shadow moved. Her name was Alara. To the Gray Fang pack, she was less than a shadow. She was the Omega, a ghost in worn-out boots and a second-hand coat 3 sizes too large. If anyone saw her, it was only to bark an order or to ensure she was out of sight. She existed on the fringes, surviving on scraps and silence. But Alara carried a secret that burned in her chest, a secret longer than any fire in the Alpha's hearth. It was a secret with 3 beating hearts. She moved like mist across the moonlit courtyard, a bundled cloth pressed tightly to her chest. Inside were 2 stolen rolls, a handful of dried meat, and an apple she'd found bruised and abandoned. It was a feast, not for her, for them. She reached the tree line, a jagged wall of darkness that marked the beginning of the Forsaken Woods, a place where the pack's scent faded and strange old magic lingered, a place where no one sane would go. For Alara, it was the only place that felt like home. She didn't call out. She simply knelt in the frost-rimed leaves, her breath a pale cloud, and they came. A soft rustle, then 3 pairs of eyes gleamed from the undergrowth, not the fiery gold of a mature wolf, but the soft, glowing light of pups. One set was a deep, soulful brown, another a startling silver blue, the third, the smallest, glimmered with a unique amber gold. "My little sparks," Alara whispered, a voice so tender it was never heard within the pack walls. "I'm here." They tumbled out, 3 scrawny wolf pups, their fur patchy, their ribs too visible. The bold one with brown eyes bumped her hand. She called him Kale. The silver-blue one, cautious and watchful, was Finn, and the tiny female with the amber eyes, who always trembled, was Lyra. "I know you're hungry," Alara murmured, unfolding the cloth. "It was a hard day in the kitchens. They were watching everything." The pups ate with a quiet desperation that never failed to shatter Alara's heart. She stroked Lyra's back, feeling the delicate bones beneath her fur. They weren't hers by blood. 6 months ago, she'd found them whimpering inside a half-sunken crate by the Black River, soaked and shivering. They bore no pack scent. They were nothing, and in the world of wolves, being nothing was a death sentence. So she had become their everything, their thief, their protector, their silent, secret mother. "You must be extra quiet tomorrow," she told them, though they understood only the comfort in her tone. "The Alpha King is coming, Cassian himself." At the name, Kale looked up, a piece of meat forgotten in his jaws. His ears twitched. "Yes, that one," Alara said, a shiver unrelated to the cold running down her spine. "They say his anger can make the earth shake. Alpha Born is terrified, and when Born is scared, he becomes cruel. So you stay hidden. Do not follow my scent. Not tomorrow. Promise me." Lyra whined, nuzzling into Alara's palm. Her throat tightened. The bond she felt wasn't just pity. It was a pull, a cord of pure light tied around her soul, stretching taut whenever she had to leave them. She covered them with her only blanket, tucked them into the hollow of an ancient, gnarled oak, and backed away into the darkness. "Stay," she breathed into the night. High above, on a wind-scoured ridge overlooking the Forsaken Woods, a figure stood silhouetted against the moon. He had arrived early, unseen, to gauge the truth of the territory he would officially inspect at dawn. A massive wolf with fur as dark as a starless night and eyes that burned like captured sunlight. King Cassian. And his golden eyes had seen it all. The furtive Omega, the hidden pups, the secret feast in the dead of night. His head tilted, curiosity cutting through his usual icy disdain. An Omega risking everything for strays. Why? He inhaled deeply, committing the strange, faint scent of the pups to memory. It was familiar in a way that made his own wolf stir uneasily in his chest. Something was wrong here, something hidden beneath the rot of Alpha Born's neglect. King Cassian melted back into the shadows, a silent oath forming in his mind. Tomorrow he would inspect the pack, but tonight he had discovered a far more interesting mystery. Dawn brought no warmth, only a pale, guilty light that did little to hide the Grey Fang Pack's desperation. The compound reeked of cheap polish and raw fear. Alara was on her knees, scrubbing the grand entrance steps with a brush so small her fingers bled. "Harder, you useless creature," snapped Greta, the head Gamma. Her voice was like cracking ice. "If the king sees a single flaw, it will be your skin on the wall." Alara scrubbed, her mind far away in the Forsaken Woods. Had the pups understood? Were they safe? At noon, the world went silent. The birds hushed. The wind died. Through the iron gates rolled a convoy of vehicles, black and silent as funeral cars. They moved with a predator's grace, and from the lead vehicle he emerged, King Cassian. The stories had not lied, but they had failed. He was taller, broader, his presence not just commanding, but consuming. Dressed in simple, dark clothes that spoke of utility, not pomp, his face was all harsh, handsome lines and the scar that traced his jaw. His hair was black, cropped short, but it was his eyes, golden and ancient, sweeping over the cowering pack with a dispassionate regard of a scientist examining insects. Alpha Borin, a bloated, greasy man, bowed so low he almost toppled. "Mighty king, welcome to our humble—" "Save it, Borin." Cassian's voice was a low rumble that vibrated in the very stones. "Your tithes are late, your borders are porous, your reports are fiction. We are not here for pleasantries." He strode past the sputtering Alpha, his guards a silent, lethal perimeter. He was halfway up the steps when he stopped. He went utterly still, his head lifted, nostrils flaring subtly. He turned, slowly. Those devastating golden eyes swept over the assembled pack, over the trembling betas, the preening gammas, the warriors trying to look proud, and passed over them all. They landed, with the weight of a physical blow, on the back row, on the row of omegas trying to vanish against the wall. On Alara. Her breath seized in her lungs. Don't look up. Submission. Become nothing. She fixed her gaze on a crack in the stone between her boots, her heart a wild, trapped thing beating against her ribs. The king's stare felt like a brand. After a lifetime of seconds, Cassian spoke, his voice dangerously soft. "You have a curious scent here, Borin, like forgotten things and hidden debts." He turned and disappeared into the manor, leaving chaos in his wake. Greta descended on the omegas, her face purple with rage. "Which one of you foul wretches offended the king's nose?" She stopped before Alara, sniffing with theatrical disgust. You smell of dirt and misery. Get to the scullery. If you're seen again, you'll wish for the whip." Alara fled, but the sensation of that golden stare followed her, a phantom heat between her shoulder blades. He hadn't looked at her with disgust. He had looked at her with recognition. The hours bled together in a steam-filled nightmare of pots and peeling vegetables. The king's visit stretched on. The perimeter was locked down. She was trapped inside, and her pups were out there, hungry and alone. Finally, as dusk painted the sky in bruises, the head cook shoved a ranking bin into her arms. "Take this to the compost, and be quick, you lazy thing." It was her chance. The compost heap was at the forest edge. She could check, just for a moment. She dragged the bin outside, the cold air a slap. She took one step toward the tree line. "The Forsaken Woods are no place for an omega at dusk." The voice came from behind her, deep and calm. Ilara's blood turned to ice. She turned slowly. King Cassian stood leaning against the back wall of the manor. He had discarded his outer coat, his white shirt rolled up, revealing powerful forearms marked with intricate, glowing tattoos of ancient alpha lineages. He held no weapon, but he was the most dangerous thing she had ever seen. "My king," she stammered, dropping into a low bow. "Just the trash." "You're lying." He took a step forward, and the world seemed to shrink to the space between them. "You smell of them, of milk and fear and pine, and something else, something old." Alara's mind screamed, "He knows." I don't know what you mean." "The pups, Alara." Her name in his mouth was a shock. "The 3 you feed in the woods. I saw you last night." The admission shattered her last hope. She fell to her knees, the frozen ground biting through her thin trousers. "Please," she begged, the word tearing from her throat. "Please, they're just orphans. They're no one. They hurt no one. I'll leave them. I'll stop. Just please don't let Boren find them. He'll kill them for sport." Cassian stared down at her, his expression unreadable. He reached out. Alara flinched, waiting for the blow. His hand didn't strike. It cupped her chin, forcing her to look up at him. His touch was not cruel. It was assessing. "Why?" he asked, his thumb brushing a smudge of dirt from her cheek. "You have nothing. This pack treats you worse than a rogue. Why risk your neck for 3 months?" Tears she refused to shed burned behind her eyes. "Because no one else will," she whispered, defiance sparking through the fear. "Everyone deserves to be seen, even the forgotten." Something shifted in Cassian's golden gaze, a crack in the ice. Before he could speak, a sound pierced the twilight, a high, desperate yelp from the woods. Alara's heart stopped. "No!" From the dark embrace of the pines, 3 small, shaky forms emerged: Kale, Finn, and Lyra. They had disobeyed. They had followed her scent, their need greater than their fear. They padded into the dim light, stopping between their protector and the giant stranger, confused and whining. Cassian's hand fell from Alara's face. He looked at the pups. He really looked at them. At Kale's brown eyes, at Finn's blue-silver gaze, and Lyra's unique amber, all the color drained from his face. The mighty King Cassian took a staggering step back, as if struck. "No," he breathed, the word a broken thing. He dropped to his knees in the mud, heedless of his clothes. He reached a trembling hand toward Lyra. The tiny pup, instead of cowering, sniffed his fingers and licked them. Cassian's head bowed. When he looked up at Alara, his eyes were blazing with a storm of emotions. Disbelief, a dawning terrible hope, and a rage so profound it made the air tremble. "Where?" he demanded, his voice a raw scrape of sound. "Did you find them?" "By the Black River," Alara whispered, terrified. 6 months ago. Who are they?" Cassian gathered Lyra gently into his arms, the pup nuzzling into his chest. He looked from her to Kale and Finn, his jaw clenched so tight Alara heard it creak. "They are not strays." He said each word heavy as stone. "This is Kale, Finn, and Lyra." He met her eyes, and the storm in his gaze solidified into a vow of vengeance. "They are my sister's children, the missing heirs of the High Mountain Kingdom, and I was told they were dead." The silence that followed was thicker than the falling snow. The lost heirs, royal blood. The truth was too enormous, too terrifying to comprehend. Alara just stared, the world tilting on its axis. Cassian rose, cradling Lyra with an instinctive care that belied his fearsome reputation. "Take the boys," he commanded Alara, his voice now all sharp, alpha authority. "We cannot stay here." He shrugged off his heavy, fur-lined cloak and draped it over Alara's shoulders. It was impossibly warm and carried his scent, snow, cedar, and power. It swallowed her whole. Alara gathered Kale and Finn, who were shivering but oddly calm in the presence of this new, powerful wolf. Cassian left them not to the front gates, but around the manor's perimeter to a secluded servant's entrance, guarded by 2 of his warriors, the Onyx Guard. Their eyes widened at the sight. "Clear the east wing corridor," Cassian ordered, his tone broking no argument. "No one in, no one. If Alpha Born himself knocks, you tell him I am resting and will disembowel anyone who disturbs me. Yes, my king." They moved like ghosts through the lavish halls. Alara, in her muddy boots and the king's majestic cloak, felt like a stain on a priceless painting. She was leaving a trail of dirt on carpets worth more than her life. Cassian pushed open the door to the royal suite. A fire roared in a hearth large enough to stand in. "Put them by the fire," he said, setting Lyra down on a thick bearskin rug. "We'll ruin it," Alara whispered, holding the boys close. "I do not care about the rug." Cassian's voice was a low growl, but he immediately softened it when Finn flinched. "I care that they are warm. Sit." Alara sat, and the pups piled into her lap, a tangle of nervous energy. They watched Cassian, their new giant guardian, with wary curiosity. Cassian pulled a sleek communicator from his pocket. "It's me," he barked into it. "Initiate Code Aurora. I need a pediatrician specialist, a healer, and a nutritionist. From the capital. No one local. They are to be silent as the grave. If a whisper of this gets out, the consequences will be eternal. ETA? Make it faster." He ended the call and paced, a caged tiger. "Shift back," he said, not unkindly, to the pups. "Let me see you." "They can't, my king," Alara said softly. "They've been stuck like this since I found them. I think the trauma locked them in." Cassian's face darkened. He went to a side cabinet and returned with a caravan of water, a bowl of fruit, and strips of smoked venison. He handed them to Alara. "Eat, all of you. You're all half-starved." As Alara fed the pups, who ate with a heartbreaking focus, Cassian dragged a chair close and sat facing her. The firelight danced over his sharp features. "My sister, Anya," he began, his voice hushed, "was the light of our family. Her mate, Ronan, was my best friend and fiercest general. They were traveling to an allied pack 2 years ago when their convoy was ambushed in the Starlight Pass. The vehicle was forced off a cliff. We found their bodies, but the children," his voice caught, "the children were gone. Swept away by the river, we assumed. We searched for months. I made the order to stop searching. I thought I was accepting their loss. I was failing them." Alara's heart ached for him, for the weight of guilt on those broad shoulders. "I only found them 6 months ago," she said. "So for a year and a half, someone else had them." "Exactly." Cassian's eyes turned to chips of frozen gold. "Someone held the royal heirs captive, and then 6 months ago, they dumped them here, in the territory of one of my weakest, most corrupt alphas. They weren't just hiding them, they were erasing them, letting the elements or a cruel alpha finish the job, so their hands would stay clean." The horror of it sunk in. "You think Alpha Born was involved?" "Born is a vicious idiot," Cassian scoffed, "but he is a tool. Someone used him, or used this territory. The crate you found. Describe the mark again." Alara closed her eyes, picturing the splintered wood she'd burned for warmth. A circle with a jagged line through it, like a crack or a bolt of black lightning. Cassian went utterly still. "The Sundered Circle," he breathed. "A mercenary guild, expensive, ruthless, and utterly anonymous. If they were hired, it means someone with immense wealth and a deep desire to see my bloodline end is behind this." He looked at her. He really looked at her. "Alara, you didn't just save 3 pups. You saved the future of my kingdom. You have held the line against a shadow war." A knock at the door shattered the moment. They froze. The pups ducked under Alara's borrowed cloak. Cassian stood, his demeanor shifting from confidant to sovereign in a heartbeat. He opened the door a crack. It was Greta. "My king," she simpered, trying to peer past him. "Alpha Boran sent me. The feast awaits your presence. And we seem to be missing our Omega. The scullery is backing up. The Omega is attending to me. She is occupied. I will attend the feast when I am ready." He shut the door in Greta's stunned face and locked it. He turned to Alara, whose cheeks were flushed. "Let her think what she wants. It is the perfect cover for why you're here and why I'm keeping you close. It protects you." He walked to her, kneeling so he was at her eye level. "Ilara, I must go to that feast. I must look Boran in the eye and not tear his head from his shoulders. I need you to guard them." From a hidden compartment in his boot, he drew a slender, elegant dagger in a leather sheath. He pressed it into her hand. Its hilt was cool, etched with runes. "I don't know how to use this," she admitted. "The point goes into the enemy," he said, utterly serious. "If anyone comes through that door who was not me or my personal guard, you use it. Do you understand?" Ilara looked at the pups, at Kale's trusting brown eyes. She gripped the dagger. The weight of it felt strange, but the purpose was clear. "I understand." Cassian held her gaze for a long moment, something unreadable passing between them. "You have the heart of a warrior," he said softly. Then he was gone, leaving her in a silent room with 3 sleeping heirs and a weapon she prayed she wouldn't need. The grand hall of Greyfang was a grotesque display of borrowed wealth. Banners hung crookedly, the food was overly rich, and the laughter was too loud, too forced. King Cassian sat at the head table, a statue of contained fury. Alpha Borin fawned beside him. "More wine, my king. We slaughtered a dozen stags in your honor." "Your tithes could buy 1,000 stags, Borin," Cassian said, his voice cutting through the noise. "Yet they are missing. Your borders could be patrolled by children, yet they are breached. Tell me of the Forsaken Woods. I hear noises." Beside Borin, his beta, a thin, sharp-faced man named Silas, froze, his fork clattering to his plate. "Noises? Just wolves, my king, or perhaps rogues. We deal with them." "Do you?" Cassian turned his golden gaze fully on Silas. It was like focusing sunlight through a lens. "I walked those woods last night. I smelled no rogues. I smelled magic, old and sour, and I smelled fear." Silas paled. "I'm sure it's just the damp, Your Majesty." The double doors to the hall exploded inward. A Greyfang warrior, blood streaming from a gash on his head, stumbled in. "Alpha, the perimeter, it's overrun." Borin surged to his feet. "Rogues? How many?" "Not rogues. Mercenaries. They wear the sundered circle. They're inside the walls." Chaos erupted. Borin screamed orders that no one heard. Cassian stood slowly. It was a trap. The inspection, the timing. Someone had signaled the sundered circle the moment he had arrived. They weren't here for the pack. They were here because they knew he was close to the truth. They were here to finish their 2-year-old mission. His eyes locked with Silas's. The beta's face was a mask of terror, but beneath it, Cassian saw the guilty flicker. Him. "Warriors, to the gates." Cassian's voice boomed over the panic, a clarion call of authority. But he didn't move toward the fight. He vaulted over the table, his path clear. The east wing. Ilara. Upstairs, Ilara heard the alarms, a piercing metallic shriek. The pups woke, whimpering. "What's that?" Finn whispered, his voice trembling through their budding pup bond. "It's nothing, my spark," Ilara lied, her heart hammering. "Just a loud noise. Come." She herded them into the massive walk-in closet, pushing them behind hanging rows of rich garments. "Stay here. Do not make a sound, no matter what you hear." "Don't go," Lyra pleaded, her amber eyes wide. "I must guard the door. I will be right here." She closed the closet door, leaving it open a crack, and turned to face the room, the dagger drawn and held in her shaking hand. Heavy, booted footsteps pounded down the hallway. Not the rhythmic step of guards. These were frantic, harsh. Thud. The lock on the suite's door shattered. The door flew open. 2 men stood there, clad in nondescript tactical gear, the dreaded sundered circle emblem on their shoulders. Their eyes were cold, professional, hunters. "Scan the room," the first one ordered. "Heat signatures show 3 small ones." Ilara stepped out from behind a heavy curtain, raising the dagger. "Leave," she said, her voice trembling but clear. The mercenaries stared. Then the second one laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "The king left a kitten to guard the cubs. Adorable. Where are they?" The first one took a step forward, ignoring her blade. He didn't see a threat. He saw a frightened girl. Ilara's fear was a living thing in her throat, but beneath it, a new sensation ignited, a fierce, molten protectiveness. These men wanted to harm her sparks. The Omega inside her cowered. The mother lion roared. She didn't wait. She lunged, not with skill, but with sheer, desperate fury. The dagger flashed. The mercenary reacted with trained speed, dodging and backhanding her across the face. Pain exploded. Stars danced in her vision. She stumbled, the dagger skittering across the floor. "Check the closet," the first mercenary ordered, pinning Ilara's arms behind her back. "No!" Ilara screamed, thrashing. She did the only thing she could think of. She stomped her boot down on his instep with all her strength, then threw her head back, connecting with his nose. He grunted in surprise, his grip loosening. Ilara twisted free as the second mercenary reached for the closet door. She didn't go for the dagger. She grabbed a heavy marble bookend from a desk. As the mercenary peered into the dark closet, Ilara brought the bookend down on the back of his head with a sickening crack. He crumpled. The first mercenary, nose bleeding, snarled and raised a strange tube-like weapon. Enough of this. The bedroom window exploded inward in a cascade of glass and snow. A massive black wolf, his golden eyes blazing with primordial fury, landed between Ilara and the mercenary. The fight was brutal and short. The black wolf was a whirlwind of fang and fury. The mercenary fired his weapon, a dart that hissed past the wolf's ear and embedded in the wall, smoking. A second later, the wolf's jaws closed on the man's arm, and a sickening snap echoed in the room. A pained shout, then silence. Cassian shifted back, breathing heavily, a cut on his shoulder. He ignored it. His eyes found Ilara. She stood by the closet, the marble bookend still clutched in her hand, her cheek already bruising. "He was going for them," Ilara said, her voice shockingly steady. Cassian crossed the room. He didn't speak. He simply pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly, his face buried in her hair. He was trembling. The unshakable king was trembling. "You fought," he murmured, the words vibrating against her. "You stood your ground." The closet door creaked open. 3 pups peered out, then rushed to Ilara, burying themselves in her legs. Cassian looked at the scene. The brave, battered Omega, the weapon in her hands, the heirs she protected. "We have to go now," he said, releasing her. "The compound is a battlefield. Silas betrayed us. We trust no one." He ripped a small communicator from the unconscious mercenary's vest. A voice crackled through static. "Team Alpha, report. Is the package secured?" Cassian pressed the button. His voice was the sound of the abyss. "This is King Cassian. Team Alpha has failed, and your employer's days are numbered." He crushed the device. "Grab the pups, Ilara. We're leaving this cursed place. The hunt begins tonight." The garage was a tomb of concrete and shadows, the blaring alarm a relentless pulse of dread. Cassian moved with lethal efficiency, heading straight for a vehicle that looked less like a car and more like an armored beast, matte gray with reinforced plates and tires taller than Ilara. "In, now!" He bundled the pups into the back seat. Ilara climbed in after them, using her body as a living shield. Cassian slammed the driver's door as the garage's main entrance began to shudder. Someone was trying to force it. He didn't wait. He threw the vehicle into reverse and slammed the accelerator. They shot backward, crashing through a secondary service door made of corrugated metal with a deafening shriek. They burst into the snowy night, the vehicle skidding on ice before finding its grip. In the rearview mirror, 2 sets of headlights flickered to life and gave chase. "Down!" Cassian barked. A moment later, gunfire peppered the back of the vehicle, sounding like furious hailstones on the armored plates. The chase was a nightmare of swirling snow and snarling engine. Cassian drove not with panic, but with a terrifying, calculated precision, pushing the heavy vehicle to its limits on the treacherous mountain road. Ilara clutched the pups, singing a soft, wordless lullaby her own mother had once sung to her, her voice the only calm in the storm. One of the pursuing vehicles took a turn too fast. Ilara watched in the side mirror as it skidded, clipped the guardrail, and spun into the black void of the ravine. A distant, muffled boom and a bloom of orange light answered a moment later. Cassian didn't flinch. "One down. They'll try to cut us off at the stone bridge. It's the only way out of this valley." "Can we make it?" Ilara asked, her voice small. "We're not taking the bridge." He yanked the wheel hard left. The vehicle left the road, crashing through a snowdrift and plunging down a steep, wooded embankment. Trees slapped against the windows. The pups yelped, tumbling into each other. "It's an adventure!" Ilara called back to them, forcing cheer into her voice. "Like the story of the ice fox." Cassian glanced at her, a flicker of something like admiration in his eyes. "Glowbox, tablet, navigate." Ilara fumbled with the device, bringing up a topographical map. "There's an old mining track here. It connects to the northern pass in about 15 miles. Guide me." For an hour, they navigated the ghost track, a ribbon of ice and forgotten stone clinging to the mountainside. Finally, they reached the wider, cleared road of the northern pass. The snow fell heavier, a blanketing silence that felt like a reprieve. Once they were cruising at a steady speed, the tension in the cab slowly eased. The pups, exhausted, fell into a deep sleep in a pile on the back seat. "Your face," Cassian said, quietly, his eyes on the road. Ilara touched her throbbing cheek. "It's nothing." "It is not nothing," he said, his voice low and fierce. "It is a mark of your courage, and it is the last mark of violence anyone will ever place upon you. I swear it." "Why?" The question escaped her again. "Why does it matter? You have your heirs. My part is done." Cassian slowed the vehicle and pulled onto a wide overlook, the engine idling. The world below was a sea of white, the moon breaking through the clouds to paint it in silver. He turned in his seat to face her. "Look at me, Ilara." His golden eyes held hers, and in them she saw not just a king, but a man burdened by loneliness and duty. "You saved the last pieces of my family. You showed them kindness in a world that offered only cruelty. You stood in defiance of death itself for them. You are the reason my kingdom still has a future." He reached out, his fingers hovering near her bruised cheek. "That is not a part. That is a foundation, and I have built my entire reign on recognizing true strength." He withdrew his hand, his gaze intense. "When I saw that man strike you, something in me broke, and then it reformed, harder, clearer. It wasn't just anger for an attack on a subject. It was—" he searched for the word, a rare vulnerability in his expression. "It was an offense against something precious. Do you understand?" Ilara's breath caught. She understood the legends, the tales of fated bonds, but such things were for alphas and lunas of noble blood, not for omegas from the gutter. "It means you're a good king," she whispered, deflecting. Cassian shook his head, a small, sad smile touching his lips. "It means, Ilara of the Grey Fang, though you belong to no one but yourself, that my wold has chosen its compass, and it points to you." He didn't claim her, he stated a fact, simple and profound. "Sleep. I will get us home." Ilara leaned back, the king's words wrapping around her like a second cloak. For the first time in her entire life, she felt seen, not as an omega, not as a ghost, but as Ilara. And she slept, a true, peaceful sleep, as the king drove them toward safety. The Iron Citadel wasn't a castle, it was a mountain that had been convinced to become a fortress. Sheer black granite walls rose from the perpetual snows of the high peaks, waterfalls frozen in time like silver veils. As the armored vehicle passed through gates that groaned with the weight of centuries, an army awaited. Hundreds of the Onyx Guards stood in perfect, silent ranks, their black armor dusted with snow. As Cassian stepped out, holding a sleeping Lyra, every single warrior dropped to one knee in unison, a wave of motion ending in absolute stillness. "Rise," Cassian commanded, his voice carrying effortlessly in the thin, cold air. Ilara emerged, holding Kale and Finn. She felt impossibly small, a spot of drab color in a world of monochrome power. But when the warriors saw the pups, when they recognized the unique eye colors of the lost royal children, a shockwave of palpable emotion went through them, awe, joy, and renewed fury. Cassian's beta, a stern, capable woman named Valeria, stepped forward. "My king, the suites are prepared, the healer is standing." "See to them," Cassian ordered, handing Lyra over with exquisite care, "and prepare a room for Ilara, adjoining the royal nursery. She does not leave their side unless she wishes it." The next days were a whirlwind of quiet luxury and healing. The pups were bathed, examined, fed the richest foods, and wrapped in the softest furs. They were skittish, haunted by memories they couldn't articulate, but they clung to Ilara. If she stepped out of sight, a chorus of distressed howls would echo through the stone halls until she returned. Ilara's own room was a marvel, simple but beautiful, with a window overlooking the glacial valleys. She was given clothes that fit, soft wool and warm leather. She was treated not as a servant, but as an honored guest. It was disorienting. On the third day, Cassian found her on a balcony watching the pups play in a secluded, snow-covered courtyard below, guarded discreetly by onyx warriors. He stood beside her, a quiet presence. "They are adjusting," he observed. "They're resilient, but they have nightmares. Lyra, she calls for a woman in the dark. Not me, someone with a singing voice." Cassian's face tightened. "My sister, Anya. She sang to them every night." He was silent for a moment. The healer confirmed it. A powerful, forbidden suppressant was used on them. Wolfsbane mixed with shadow moss. It trapped their wolves, stunted their shifts, and blurred their memories. It was a deliberate act of cruelty. Ilara's hand flew to her mouth. Who could do that to children? Someone who wanted them docile, forgetful, and eventually dead from natural causes, Cassian said, his voice like grinding stone. But the scent on the mercenary's dart, the financial trails Valeria is uncovering, it all leads back to the capital, to someone within the circle of high nobility. "You have a traitor in your court." "I have a viper in my house," he corrected, his gaze turning distant and cold. "And tomorrow we begin to smoke it out. The captives from Greyfang have arrived." A ripple of disbelief went through the nobles. Ilara, in her simple gray dress, walked forward and sat, feeling the weight of 100 hostile and curious stares. She focused on the prisoners, on the people who had made her life a hell. Cassian stood. "You are brought before this court accused of high treason, neglect of the royal bloodline, and conspiracy to murder the heirs of the High Mountain Kingdom." His voice was cold, clear, and carried death in every syllable. "How do you plead?" "I didn't know," Boren wailed. "I swear on the moon, my king. Silas handled the books, the borders. He told me the money was from timber. I never saw any pups." Cassian's gaze shifted to Silas. "Well?" Silas looked up, his eyes burning with a bitter intelligence. "He speaks the truth. He is a gluttonous fool. He knew nothing." He straightened as much as his chains allowed. "I did it. The Sundered Circle contacted me 18 months ago. They offered wealth beyond imagination, and a guarantee that I would be made alpha of Greyfang and given lands near the capital once the royal line was decisively ended. I provided the location. The Forsaken Woods was the designated dumping ground." The hall erupted in gasps and growls. Cassian held up a hand, and the noise cut off. "Who hired them?" Silas laughed, a dry, hacking sound. "They do not give names. The money was transferred through shell companies based in the Southern Isles, but the initial contact, it came through a secured message, delivered by a palace courier, with the royal seal." A stunned silence blanketed the hall. A palace courier. The plot reached into the heart of Cassian's own home. Cassian's expression was carved from ice. "For conspiracy to commit regicide, the sentence is death. Silas of Greyfang, you will be executed at dawn." Silas nodded, accepting his fate. The guards dragged him away. Cassian then looked at Boren and Greta. "You claim ignorance, but your ignorance was a choice. You chose not to see the suffering in your own territory. You chose to brutalize the weak under your care." He turned to Ilara. "My lady Ilara, they are yours to judge. Their fate is in your hands." All eyes turned to her. Boren looked up, desperate. "Ilara, please! I took you in. I gave you shelter." Ilara stood. She walked slowly down the dais steps until she stood before the man who had scarred her body and the woman who had scarred her spirit. She felt no rage in that moment, only a deep, weary pity. "You gave me a cage," she said, her voice clear and carrying. "You fed me humiliation and called it charity. You watched me fade and called it my place." She looked at Cassian. "I do not want their deaths. Death is an escape." She turned back to the prisoners. "You are wolves who have forgotten the pack, so you shall be packless. You are stripped of your ranks, your titles, and your lands. You will be taken to the border and released as rogues. You will know the cold you forced on others. You will know the hunger. You will know what it is to be invisible. That is your sentence, to live with what you created. The sentence was met with murmurs of approval. For wolves, to be packless was a fate worse than death, a slow unraveling of the soul. As Born and Greta were dragged away sobbing, Cassian addressed his court. Let it be known, the heirs, Prince Kael, Prince Finn, and Princess Lyra, live, and they live because of the courage and heart of Ilara. She is under the permanent protection of the crown. An offense against her is an offense against the throne itself. Then he turned to Ilara, and in front of everyone, he went down on one knee. The king kneeling before the Omega. The court gasped. Ilara, he said, his voice soft but meant for all to hear. My kingdom does not need more political alliances. It needs integrity. It does not need more cold power. It needs the warmth you carry. My nephews and niece do not need a governess. They need the mother who saved them. He took her hand. I do not ask for a queen to rule beside me. I ask for a partner to help me build a kingdom worthy of these children. Will you stay? Will you help me guide them and help me root the corruption from our home? It wasn't a proposal of marriage, but something deeper, a proposal of shared purpose, a family, of a bond built on respect and a battle fought together. Tears filled Ilara's eyes. She looked at the pups, who had been brought in and were watching, their eyes wide. She looked at the king, whose golden gaze held only sincerity and a hope he dared not voice. Yes, she said, her voice strong. Yes, Cassian, I will stay. The hall erupted not in cheers, but in a deep, respectful roar of approval, the sound of wolves accepting a new member into the heart of the pack. The ghost had found not just a home, but a destiny. Life in the Iron Citadel settled into a new, hopeful rhythm. The pups, slowly weaned off the lingering suppressants with the healer's help, began to show their true personalities. Kael was bold and mischievous, Finn thoughtful and observant, and Lyra, though still shy, had a smile that could melt glaciers. They called Ilara Mama Lara, a title that filled her with a joy so profound it was almost painful. Cassian was a constant, steady presence. He joined them for meals, listened to the pups' rambling stories, and consulted Ilara on matters of the nursery and increasingly on the morale of the Citadel's staff. He valued her perspective, her innate sense of justice and kindness. A deep, quiet respect blossomed between them, a foundation stronger than passion. But the shadow of the traitor loomed. One evening, as they reviewed the financial trails Valerie had uncovered, a pattern emerged. All the shell companies filtered through a single, reputable banking guild in the capital, the Guild of Silver Ledgers, headed by a notoriously discreet man named Lord Tavish. Tavish is old money, Cassian said, frowning at the documents. He would never risk his reputation for mere wealth. He'd need a reason, a threat, or a shared cause. A cause like what? Ilara asked. Like ensuring the throne never passed to my sister's line, Cassian said darkly. Anya was progressive. She believed in integrating with human governments, in reforming our ancient laws. There are traditionalists who saw her as a threat to our purity. If her children were gone, the line would pass to other branches of the family, more malleable branches. A young page, nervous, entered the study. A message for you, my king, from the capital, marked urgent and for your eyes only. He handed over a sealed scroll with a familiar, elegant wax seal, the crest of the High Council. Cassian broke the seal and read. His face, already stern, turned to stone. He handed the scroll to Ilara. To His Majesty King Cassian, the council rejoices at the miraculous return of the royal heirs. to ensure their security and proper upbringing, and to stabilize the line of succession, the council unanimously advises and expects a swift political marriage to a Luna of proven noble lineage. The Lady Seraphine of the House of Frost, a direct descendant of the first kings, has been suggested and is willing. We await your confirmation to begin arrangements. Lord Orin, Council Head. Ilara's heart sank, though she tried to hide it. This was the way of their world. It is a logical suggestion, she said softly, handing the scroll back. Cassian crumpled the parchment in his fist, his golden eyes flashing. It is an insult to you, to the bravery you showed, and to my own judgment. He stood, pacing. This reeks of Orin. He was always Anya's loudest critic. He leads the traditionalist faction, and he is first cousin to Lord Tavish of the Silver Ledgers. A side door opened. The pups, dressed in stiff, formal clothes, were led in by two of Orin's guards. They looked small and scared, their eyes scanning the crowd for Ilara. She saw Kyle jaw set in defiance, Finn's hand reaching for Lyra's. "Come, children," Orin said, his voice dripping with false warmth. "Receive the moon's blessing for your new mother." As the pups were ushered toward a raised dais near a large ornate stained glass window, Ilara saw one of the guards near a heavy embroidered curtain nod subtly to Orin. A faint smell of oil reached her nose. The fire. It's going to start near the curtain. Now. She stepped forward, her voice cutting through the ceremonial music. "Stop!" Every head turned, gasps echoed. Seraphine looked furious. Orin's face tightened with irritation. "You dare interrupt?" "I dare to protect the heirs from the wolf in shepherd's clothing," Ilara declared, walking down the aisle, all eyes upon her. She felt like a mouse facing down a forest of hawks, but the letters in her dress were armor. "Lord Orin, you speak of blessings while you plot murder. You speak of tradition while you hire mercenaries to kill children." The chapel erupted in uproar. "Lies!" Orin thundered, his composure cracking. "Seize this hysterical creature." Cassian's voice, calm and absolute, silenced the room. "Let her speak." He stepped down from the altar, his presence shifting from groom to sovereign judge. Ilara culled the letters from her dress, proof of a contract with the Sundered Circle, paid for with funds from the Silver Ledgers, overseen by your cousin Tavish. She threw them on the marble floor, and proof of your intent to remove the heirs even now to clear the way for your pucket to control the throne. She threw down the second letter. Finally, she pulled the small box from her pocket and opened it, holding up the dried moon lily and the child's drawing, and a trophy from the sister you had murdered. Do you recognize it, my lord? Do you remember Princess Anya's favorite flower? The sight of the child's drawing broke the last of Orin's facade. His face twisted with rage and panic. They were a threat to our very way of life. That bleeding heart princess and her mongrel-minded children. I saved the kingdom. His confession, born of arrogant fury, echoed in the stunned silence. Cassian moved. In 2 strides, he was before Orin, his hand around the older man's throat. "You murdered nothing. You murdered my family. You tortured children. You betrayed your king and your kind." He shoved Orin toward Valeria and the Onyx Guard, who now flooded the chapel, disarming Orin's men. "Take him to the darkest cell. His trial will be short." Then he turned to Lady Seraphine, who had gone pale. "Did you know?" She shook her head, genuinely terrified. "No, my king. I was a pawn, I swear. He promised my family influence." "You are banished from court, forever." Cassian's dismissal was final. He then looked out over the shocked, silent nobility. The conspiracy is broken. The heirs are safe. And they are safe because of the loyalty and courage of one whom many of you deemed unworthy. He walked to Ilara and took her hand, raising it high. Ilara has more honor in her smallest finger than this entire conspiracy had in its black heart. From this day forward, she is protector of the royal heirs, a titled lady of this realm, and my most trusted advisor. Any who challenge her place, challenge me. It was a declaration of power, of loyalty, and of a bond that needed no ancient ceremonies to be real. The weeks that followed were a time of cleansing and renewal. Lord Oren's faction was dismantled, its members exiled or stripped of power. Lord Tavish was arrested. The Sundered Circle, with its leadership exposed, found itself hunted by every loyal pack in the kingdom. In the Iron Citadel, finally, spring began to whisper at the edges of the ice. One morning, Alara found Cassian in the courtyard where the pups were playing, now under the watchful, kind eyes of tutors and guards who had earned absolute trust. "They are happy," Cassian said, watching Kyle try to show Finn how to build a snow wolf. "They are healing," Alara replied, standing beside him. "We all are." He turned to her, the morning sun turning his golden eyes to warm honey. "Alara, when I asked you to stay, I spoke of partnership, of building a kingdom. I meant every word. But my heart—" He paused, a rare uncertainty in the mighty Alpha. "My heart speaks of more. It speaks of a bond I did not believe existed, a bond not of fate, but of choice. A choice to stand together not because the moon wills it, but because our spirits do." He took both her hands in his. "I do not offer you a crown out of obligation. I offer you my heart, my loyalty, and my life, out of love and profound respect. Will you, Alara, not just be my partner in rule, but my partner in all things? Will you be my Luna in the truest sense of the word?" Tears of pure joy streamed Alara's face. This was not a political arrangement. This was a promise offered freely from a king to the woman who had shown him what true strength looked like. "Yes, Cassian," she whispered, "with all my heart, yes." Their wedding was not in the cold moonstone palace, but in the citadel's great courtyard, under the open sky and the approving eyes of the mountain peaks. It was simple, filled with genuine joy. The pups, now able to shift for the first time into their human forms, 3 beautiful, dark-haired children with familiar, stunning eyes, stood with them, a complete family. As the ceremony ended and the pack cheered, Cassian leaned close, his forehead touching hers, a gesture of deep affection and equality. "My Luna," he murmured. "My king," she smiled back. And as the first true sunrise of spring broke over the high peaks, bathing the Iron Citadel in gold, the Omega, who was once a ghost, stood hand in hand with her king, surrounded by the laughter of children. Home at last. The shadows were gone. Only light remained. The pieces clicked together with a chilling finality. "You think Lord Oren is the traitor?" "I think he is the viper's head," Cassian growled. "He wanted Anya's line gone to push his own agenda. He used Tavish to funnel money to the Sundered Circle, and now, with the pups alive, he moves to control them through a marriage to a puppet Luna from his own faction." He stopped, a plan forming in his eyes. "We must draw him out. We must make him show his fangs." "How?" A slow, dangerous smile touched Cassian's lips. "We give him exactly what he wants, and public announcement of my intended marriage." The announcement sent shockwaves through the kingdom. King Cassian, the untouchable, was to marry, but not just anyone, the impeccably bred, famously beautiful, and icily traditional Lady Seraphine. The traditionalists rejoiced. The more progressive factions were dismayed. Preparations for a grand betrothal ceremony at the capital's Moonstone Palace began at once. Alara's heart ached, but she buried it deep, focusing on the pups. Cassian had asked for her trust, and she gave it. Yet, watching him leave for the capital with a stoic expression, a part of her wondered if this was the painful reality she had always expected. A week later, a summons arrived for her and the children. The king requested their presence at the palace for the family introduction before the ceremony. It was phrased as a courtesy, but Alara felt the trap in the words. The journey to the capital was tense. The Moonstone Palace was breathtaking, all white spires and glittering courts, but it felt cold, its beauty sterile. They were ushered into opulent rooms, but the servants' eyes were wary, and the guards posted at their doors were unfamiliar, wearing the livery of the council, not the Onyx Guard. The sense of being a prisoner in a gilded cage grew. The family introduction was a farce. Lord Oren, a tall, gaunt man with silver hair and eyes the color of a frozen lake, presided. Lady Seraphine was indeed beautiful, with hair like spun platinum and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She looked at the pups as if they were interesting sculptures, and at Alara as if she were a stain on the carpet. "The children seem rustic," Oren observed, his voice smooth as oil. "Country air, I suppose. They will need proper tutors, and of course they will reside in the royal wing under the new Luna's direct care." Ilara's blood ran cold. "They're comfortable with me. A sudden change is necessary," Oren interrupted, "for the stability of their new lives. You have served your purpose, my dear. The crown is grateful. A generous pension has been arranged. You will return to the north or wherever you wish." It was a dismissal, a gentle, lethal eradication her from their lives. The pups, sensing the tension, clung to her. Kale growled, a tiny, brave sound. That night, in the lavish but suffocating room, a secret note was slipped under Alara's door. It was in Cassian's distinctive, sharp handwriting. "The walls have ears, the garden, the white rose arbor, midnight. Come alone, trust no one." Fear and hope warred within her. At midnight, she wrapped herself in a dark cloak and slipped into the palace's sprawling, moonlit gardens. The white rose arbor was a tunnel of pale blossoms and shadow. Cassian was there, not in regal finery, but in dark, close-fitting clothes. 2 of his most trusted onyx guards, including Valeria, melted from the shadows. "Ilara," he breathed, pulling her into the cover of the roses, "are you and the children unharmed? For now, Oren plans to separate us. He's taking the children." Cassian's eyes glowed faintly in the dark. "I know. It's all going as he hopes. He believes I am cowed by tradition and am accepting this marriage to secure my throne. He is getting arrogant." He gripped her shoulders. "I need you to do something dangerous. Tomorrow, at the betrothal ceremony, he will make his final move. He will have the children brought to the royal chapel for a blessing. It will be a trap. I believe he plans to stage an accident, a tragic fire perhaps, that kills the heirs and frames you or a convenient scapegoat, finally clearing his path." Ilara gasped. "We have to get them out of here now." "If we run, he remains in power, a cancer in the heart of the kingdom. We must expose him. To do that, we need proof, and we need him to act." His gaze was fierce. "Valeria has located his private study. It is warded and guarded, but there is a way in through the old servants' passages. You know stone and silence better than any warrior. Can you find it, and find whatever evidence he keeps?" It was a spy's mission, a thief's task, the very skills she'd honed in Greyfang to survive. She nodded, determination solidifying her fear. "Tell me where to go." The betrothal day dawned clear and cold. The palace was a hive of controlled chaos. In the frenzy, Alara became a ghost once more. Slipping away from the fussing maids, she used the map Valeria had provided, disappearing into a forgotten corridor behind a tapestry. The servants' passages were narrow, dusty, and dark, smelling of old stone and loneliness. She moved without sound, her heart a frantic drum. She counted doorways, descended a tight spiral staircase, and finally found the hidden entrance to Lord Oren's private wing, a disguised panel in a linen closet. The other side was a different world, plush carpets, gleaming wood, the scent of expensive sandalwood. She crept to the door of his study. It was locked, and a faint, shimmering blue aura, a magical ward, pulsed around the frame. Valeria had given her a small, smooth stone etched with counter wards. Pressing it to the lock, she felt a subtle pop of dispelled energy. The door clicked open. The study was a monument to cold ambition. Ledgers lined the walls. She went straight to the large, ornate desk. The drawers were locked, but a hairpin from her borrowed gown and a lifetime of picking makeshift locks in Greyfang had them open in moments. She found what she was looking for in the false bottom of the third drawer. Not digital files, but old-fashioned, damning parchment, Letters. One was a contract with the Sundered Circle detailing the acquisition and disposal of the 3 royal packages. The payment was astronomical. It was signed with a symbol, not a name, but the wax seal next to it was unmistakably Lord Tavish's. Another letter was in Oren's own hand to an ally. The king is distracted by the Omega Wetch. His judgment is clouded by sentiment. Once the Frost Girl is Luna and the half-wild pups are brought to heel, or removed in a suitably tragic manner, the throne will be guided by true traditional strength once more. Ilara's blood shook as she folded the letters and tucked them into her dress. As she turned to leave, her foot caught on the edge of a loose floorboard. It tilted with a soft creak. Beneath it was a small, flat box. Inside was a single dried white flower, a moon lily, incredibly rare, said to only bloom where pure magic dwells, and a faded child's drawing of a woman with silver blue eyes like fins, holding the same flower. Anya. He had kept a trophy, a memento of the sister he had destroyed. Hearing footsteps approaching in the hall, Ilara wrapped herself in the passages just as the study door opened. She had the proof. Now she had to get it to Cassian before the ceremony reached its deadly point. The royal chapel was packed with the glittering elite of the kingdom. Cassian stood at the altar, looking regal and remote beside the smiling Seraphim. Lord Oren stood proudly to the side, officiating. The air thrummed with false celebration. Ilara slipped into the back of the chapel, her pulse roaring in her ears. She caught Cassian's eye for a fleeting second. He gave an almost imperceptible nod, the signal. Oren raised his hands. Before we bless this sacred union, let us first bless the future, the beloved heirs who have returned to us. He gestured grandly.